At my dad's retirement party, he announced my lazy brother would be the new CEO. My consolation prize was a fake title meant to keep me quiet. Instead, I walked to the podium, resigned in front of everyone, and took the clients who built his company with me. My dad's jaw hit the floor. I need to tell you how I got to that moment because it didn't happen overnight. It was the result of 15 years of work, sacrifice, and being invisible in my own story. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and for most of my adult life, I believed that hard work and loyalty would be rewarded. I was wrong. When I was 23, fresh out of business school, my dad started his company. Mitchell Consulting Services was supposed to be his retirement dream, a small firm helping manufacturers improve their operations. He had the vision and the charm, but he needed someone who could actually make it happen. That someone was me. I remember our first office. It was a converted storage space above a dry cleaner in downtown Portland. The whole place smelled like chemicals, and the air conditioning only worked when it felt like it. My dad spent most of his time networking at business lunches and golf courses, which he called building relationships. Meanwhile, I was learning operations management, studying our clients' industries at night, and cold calling potential customers during the day. Our first real client was a mid-sized furniture manufacturer called Cascade Woodworks. They were struggling with production delays and quality control issues. My dad had met the owner at a Rotary Club meeting and somehow convinced him to give us a shot. The problem was, my dad had promised results he had no idea how to deliver. That fell on me. I spent 3 months basically living at their factory. I mapped every step of their production process, interviewed workers on every shift, and identified 17 critical bottlenecks. Then I redesigned their entire workflow, implemented a new quality tracking system, and trained their supervisors on the changes. Within 6 months, their defect rate dropped by 60%, and their production time improved by 40%. They went from barely profitable to thriving. That success put us on the map. The owner told everyone he knew about us, and suddenly we had more leads than we could handle. But here's the thing. Nobody talks about when they celebrate business success. Behind every victory were hundreds of hours I spent away from friends, away from any kind of social life, away from everything except work. While people my age were going to concerts and taking vacations and building relationships, I was in factories and warehouses covered in grease and dust, solving problems. My dad was proud of me in his way. He would introduce me to people as his secret weapon, his brilliant daughter who made everything work. But when it came time to sign contracts or present final recommendations to clients, he was always the face of the company. I told myself it made sense. He was older, more experienced at client relations, and people trusted a seasoned expert more than a young woman. I genuinely believed that my time would come. Then there was Leo. My brother is 2 years younger than me, and we could not be more different. Where I was driven and focused, Leo was charming and lazy. He graduated college with a communications degree after taking 6 years and changing his major 3 times. After graduation, he bounced between jobs, never lasting more than a year anywhere. He tried being a personal trainer, then a real estate agent, then something in marketing that I never quite understood. When Leo was 27, my dad decided it was time for him to join the family business. I was actually excited about it. I thought having another person who cared about the company would take some pressure off me. Maybe I could finally delegate some responsibilities and create a real management structure. I was so naive. Leo's first week, I spent hours explaining our processes, introducing him to clients, and setting up projects he could manage. Simple stuff at first, like following up on proposals and scheduling meetings. He smiled and nodded and took notes, and I thought everything would be fine. It was not fine. His first solo client meeting was with a potential customer, a textile company looking to streamline their distribution process. I had prepared a complete presentation with data, case studies, and a preliminary analysis of their needs. Leo just had to show up, present the materials, and answer basic questions. He showed up 45 minutes late, forgot the presentation materials, and when he tried to wing it, he got basic facts about their industry completely wrong. The client called my dad directly to complain, and I had to schedule an emergency meeting to salvage the relationship. I fixed it. I always fixed it. Over the next few years, this became the pattern. Leo would make mistakes, and I would clean them up. He scheduled a product demo for a client, but forgot to actually prepare the demo. I stayed up all night building it. He promised a client a solution we didn't offer. I figured out how to create that solution in 2 weeks. He missed a critical deadline that would have cost us a major contract. I worked an entire weekend to complete it and delivered it personally. The worst part was not the extra work. It was watching my dad make excuses for him. When Leo missed meetings, my dad said he was still learning the business. When Leo's projects failed, my dad said he needed more time to find his strengths. When clients specifically requested not to work with Leo anymore, my dad reassigned him to different accounts and told me to keep an eye on things. I kept thinking it would change. I kept believing that eventually my dad would see that Leo was not cut out for this work, and I was carrying the entire company on my back. I had no idea how blind I was. By the time I turned 35, Mitchell Consulting Services had grown into something impressive. We had 20 employees, an office in a real building with windows and everything, and annual revenue in the 8-figure range. We were one of the top consulting firms in the Pacific Northwest. I had personally managed projects for over 60 major clients, developed our signature methodology that other firms tried to copy, and built a reputation in the industry as someone who delivered results. I knew every employee by name. I knew their kids' names, their career goals, what motivated them. I had recruited half of them myself, trained most of them, and created a culture where people actually wanted to work hard because they felt valued. Our retention rate was amazing in an industry known for burnout. I also had relationships with our biggest clients that went back years. Mr. Harrison had been with us since year 2. His manufacturing company had grown alongside ours, and he had personally told me multiple times that he stayed with Mitchell Consulting because of me. Ms. Chen's logistics company was our largest account, worth over $3 million annually, and she called me directly whenever she needed advice, bypassing my dad completely. These relationships were not accidents. I had earned every single one of them through late-night calls when problems emerged, through creative solutions when standard approaches failed, through being reliable and competent, and genuinely invested in their success. In this industry, trust is everything, and I had spent 15 years building it. My dad, meanwhile, had transitioned into what he called strategic oversight. In reality, this meant he played golf 3 times a week, had long lunches with old friends, and showed up at the office mainly for important meetings where he could be the charming face of the company. He was good at that part. He knew how to work a room, tell stories that made people laugh, and project confidence and experience. But the actual work of running the company, solving problems, and keeping clients happy, that was all me. I was essentially the CEO in everything but title. I set strategy, managed operations, oversaw finances, and made every major decision. My dad would give his input, and I valued his experience. But I was driving the ship. Everyone in the company knew it. Our employees came to me with problems. Clients called me first. Industry peers recognized me at conferences. But my business card said Senior Operations Director, not partner, not president, not even Executive Vice President, just Director. I told myself titles did not matter. I told myself that I was building something meaningful and that recognition would come eventually. I told myself a lot of things that turned out to be lies. Leo, during all this growth, had settled into a role that basically involved showing up when he felt like it and taking credit for other people's work. My dad had given him the title of Vice President of Client Relations, which sounded impressive but meant nothing because Leo had no actual clients. The few times my dad tried to give him real responsibilities, I ended up doing the work anyway to prevent disasters. But Leo looked the part. He wore expensive suits, drove a luxury car the company leased for him, and had mastered the art of corporate speak. He could walk into a room and sound like he knew what he was talking about for about 10 minutes, which was just long enough to fool people who did not have to actually work with him. My dad saw this and somehow convinced himself that Leo had executive presence. I should have seen what was coming. The signs were obvious. My dad started talking more about legacy and succession planning. He made comments about keeping the business in the family and how important it was that the Mitchell name stayed on the building. He started including Leo in more high-level meetings, even though Leo contributed nothing useful and often looked at his phone the entire time. But I pushed those warning signs aside because I could not imagine my dad would actually be that stupid. The company was successful because of systems I built, relationships I maintained, and standards I enforced. Putting Leo in charge would be like handing the keys of a race car to someone who failed driver's ed. It was unthinkable. Then came the retirement announcement. My dad was 68 and had been talking about slowing down for years. 6 months before the party, he made it official. He would retire at the end of the fiscal year and hand over leadership to the next generation. He said this at a company meeting with everyone present. And the way he looked at me when he said it made me feel like, finally, after 15 years, I was going to get what I had earned. I started preparing. I developed a 5-year strategic plan for the company's growth. I identified new market opportunities and outlined how we could expand our services. I had conversations with our key employees about their futures with the firm and reassured them that the transition would be smooth. I even started thinking about changes I would make, ways to improve our culture and operations, now that I would have full authority to implement my vision. The retirement party was scheduled for a Saturday evening in June at the Riverside Country Club. This was not some casual office gathering. My dad wanted it to be a major event, a celebration of his career and the company's success. He invited everyone, all our employees and their spouses, our biggest clients, business partners, even competitors he was friendly with. The guest list was over 200 people. I spent weeks helping plan it. My dad wanted everything perfect, and I made sure it was. I coordinated with the event planner, approved the menu, arranged for a video presentation about the company's history, and even helped write talking points for various people who would give toasts. My mom, who usually stayed out of business matters, was nervous and excited about the whole thing. The day of the party, I got ready carefully. I chose a navy blue dress that was professional but elegant, simple jewelry, and heels that were comfortable enough to stand in for hours. I looked at myself in the mirror and felt proud. This was my moment. After all the years of work, all the sacrifices, all the times I had put the company first, I was about to step into the role I had been preparing for my entire adult career. The country club looked beautiful. They had set up the main ballroom with round tables covered in white linens, centerpieces of white roses and greenery, and soft lighting that made everything glow. A stage was set up at the front with a podium and a large screen for presentations. The bar was open and waiters circulated with appetizers. It looked like a wedding reception, which I guess in a way it was. My dad was marrying off his company. I arrived early and immediately started working the room. This was second nature to me. I greeted our employees, thanked them for coming, and made sure everyone felt welcomed. I spent extra time with our key clients, making sure they had drinks and introducing them to each other. Mr. Harrison, who ran our second largest account, pulled me aside to tell me how excited he was about the future and how much he looked forward to working with me in my expanded role. Ms. Chen hugged me and said she had been waiting for this day, that she always knew I would take the company to new heights. Their words filled me with confidence and validation. These were not empty compliments. These were people who had worked with me for years, who had seen my competence firsthand, who trusted me with their businesses. I felt ready. Leo showed up late, of course, with a girlfriend none of us had met before. He looked good, though. He had that going for him. Expensive suit, perfect hair, confident smile. He worked the room too, but in a different way. Where I had substantive conversations about business and relationships, Leo did the social butterfly thing. Lots of handshakes and laughs, but nothing deep. I watched people's faces when they talked to him. They were polite but not engaged. They knew who really ran the company. My dad was in his element. He loved being the center of attention, and tonight, everyone was there to celebrate him. He moved from group to group, telling stories about the early days, laughing loudly and soaking up the admiration. My mom stayed close to him, smiling and playing the proud wife. She caught my eye at one point and winked at me, and I smiled back. Even she knew what was coming. Dinner was served around 7, filet mignon and salmon, roasted vegetables, some kind of fancy potato dish. I barely tasted my food. I was too anxious, too excited, too ready for the next chapter to begin. At my table sat some of our senior employees and their spouses. They kept looking at me with knowing smiles, making comments about big changes and new beginnings. Everyone knew. It was obvious. After dinner, the lights dimmed and the video presentation played. It was a 15-minute montage of the company's history, starting with photos of that terrible first office and moving through various milestones. There were pictures of our first clients, our first big win, the day we moved into our current office. There were clips of employees talking about what the company meant to them. There were client testimonials about the impact we had made on their businesses. I appeared in a lot of the footage. There I was presenting to clients, leading team meetings, accepting an industry award on behalf of the company. There I was at company picnics, holiday parties, and volunteer events. 15 years of my life played across that screen, and I felt emotional watching it. I had given everything to building something meaningful. Leo was barely in the video. A few group shots, one clip where he was in the background of a meeting. It was unintentional, but telling. You cannot fake a legacy, and the video made it clear who had actually built this company. When the video ended, everyone applauded. Then, my dad stood up and walked to the podium. The room quieted down. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. He started with jokes, self-deprecating stories about his early mistakes, funny anecdotes about difficult clients, warm reminiscences about the people who had helped him along the way. He thanked my mom for supporting him through the stressful early years. He thanked our employees for their dedication. He thanked our clients for their trust and partnership. The speech was classic, my dad, charming and entertaining and just emotional enough without being maudlin. Then he shifted gears. He started talking about legacy, about what it means to build something that lasts beyond yourself. He talked about family businesses and the importance of passing values and vision from one generation to the next. He got more serious, more reflective. He said that the hardest part of retirement was letting go, trusting that what you built would continue to thrive without you. I felt my heart beating faster. This was it. He said that succession planning had been on his mind for years, that choosing the right leader for the company's future was the most important decision he would ever make. He said he needed someone who understood the company's values, someone clients would trust, someone who could take Mitchell Consulting Services to even greater heights. I was holding my breath. He paused for dramatic effect, looking out over the room with a smile. Then, he said, which is why I am thrilled to announce that my son, Leo Mitchell will be taking over as Chief Executive Officer of Mitchell Consulting Services. The words hit me like a physical blow. For a second, I thought I had heard wrong. The room erupted in applause, people standing and clapping, and I sat frozen in my chair, unable to process what had just happened. Leo stood up, looking surprised and humble, like this was unexpected. He walked to the stage and hugged my dad. And they stood there together, beaming while everyone cheered. I could see our employees exchanging confused glances. I could see clients looking uncomfortable, but they clapped anyway, because what else do you do when someone announces something like that? I felt cold. That is the only way I can describe it. It was like every emotion shut down at once, and all that was left was this icy numbness spreading through my body. My hands were shaking. I put them in my lap so no one would see. My dad was still talking, going on about Leo's qualities and potential. He said Leo had a natural gift for leadership, that he understood people, that he had fresh ideas that would drive the company forward. Every word felt like a knife. These were lies. Everyone in that room who actually worked with Leo knew these were lies. Then, almost as an afterthought, my dad added, "And of course, my wonderful daughter Sarah will be supporting him as our new Senior Vice President of Strategic Development." Senior Vice President of Strategic Development. I had never heard that title before because it did not exist. He had made it up on the spot. Strategic development, it was corporate nonsense, a collection of important-sounding words that meant absolutely nothing. It was a participation trophy, a pat on the head, a way to acknowledge my existence without giving me any actual power or recognition. The applause continued, but it was weaker now. People were confused. This was not what anyone had expected. I could feel people looking at me, trying to gauge my reaction. I kept my face neutral through sheer force of will. I would not give my father the satisfaction of seeing me cry or show anger in front of everyone. But inside, something broke. 15 years. 15 years of my life. Every late night, every weekend, every sacrifice I had made, it all flashed through my mind in that moment. Every time I had covered for Leo's incompetence, every time I had put the company before my own needs, every time I had told myself that hard work and loyalty would be rewarded, I had been a fool. I thought about all the times I had defended my dad to friends who questioned why I was not a partner. I thought about all the opportunities I had turned down from other firms who wanted to hire me. I thought about the relationships I had never built and the experiences I had missed because I was always working. And for what? To be given a fake title and told to support my incompetent brother? The realization crystallized into clarity. My father had never seen me as a successor. He had seen me as a resource, a support system for his real heir. I was the engine that made everything work, but Leo was always going to be the driver. Because he was the son, it did not matter that I was more qualified, more experienced, more capable. It did not matter that clients trusted me and employees respected me. It did not matter that I had given everything to build his company. I was a woman and Leo was a man. And in my father's mind, that was all that mattered. The anger came then, cold and focused. I looked up at the stage where my dad and Leo were still standing, soaking up applause and congratulations. They looked so pleased with themselves, so confident that this was the right decision. My dad's eyes found mine across the room, and he smiled at me, expecting what? Gratitude? Acceptance? I smiled back. It was not a real smile. It was the smile you give when you have made a decision and are completely at peace with it, even though it is going to destroy everything. I stood up. My legs felt steady now, the shaking gone. I walked toward the stage, and I could feel the room's attention shift to me. My dad's smile widened. He probably thought I was coming up to hug him and Leo to play my part as a supportive daughter and dutiful number two. I walked past them. I walked straight to the podium, and my dad's smile faltered. Leo looked confused. I picked up the microphone, and the room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I looked out at the audience, 200 faces staring at me, waiting to see what I would do. I saw our employees, worry and anticipation in their eyes. I saw our clients, some of whom were already starting to look concerned. I saw my mom, her hand covering her mouth. I saw people I had worked with for over a decade, people who knew exactly what this announcement meant. I took a breath and spoke. "Thank you, Dad, for that announcement." My voice was calm and steady. Years of client presentations had taught me how to project confidence even when I was falling apart inside. I wish Leo the best of luck in his new role. He will certainly need it. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter went through the crowd. Behind me, I could sense my dad and Leo tensing up. As for me, effective immediately, I am resigning from my position at Mitchell Consulting Services. The silence that followed was deafening. Then the whispers started, a wave of shocked murmuring spreading through the ballroom. I did not pause. It has been an honor to work with our dedicated staff over these past 15 years. You are talented, hardworking people, and I am proud of everything we built together. I turned slightly and made direct eye contact with Mr. Harrison. Then, Miss Chen. Then, 3 other major clients I had worked with for years. To our valued clients and partners, your trust and collaboration have been the most rewarding part of my career here. I want you to know that I will be in touch tomorrow to discuss the future and ensure continuity of service. That last line was important. I was not just quitting, I was taking them with me. I placed the microphone back on the podium and turned to face my father and brother for the first time since walking up there. My dad's face was pale, his mouth open in shock. Leo looked like a deer in headlights, frozen and terrified. Neither of them had expected this. They had thought I would just accept it, swallow my anger and disappointment like I always had. They were wrong. I walked off the stage, down the center aisle between tables. People were still too stunned to react. I could hear my dad calling my name, but I did not turn around. I kept walking with my head high and my steps steady. I pushed through the double doors at the back of the ballroom and kept going. The cool night air hit my face as I exited the building. My car was in the parking lot, and I walked to it on autopilot. My hands were shaking again as I unlocked the door, but this time, it was not from hurt or anger. It was adrenaline, the sheer overwhelming intensity of what I had just done. I sat in the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel. Then the emotions hit me all at once. Relief, terror, grief, freedom. I started laughing, and then I was crying. And then I was doing both at the same time. I had just walked away from 15 years of my life. I had just quit in the most dramatic and public way possible. I had just blown up my relationship with my father and probably my entire family. And I felt alive for the first time in years. I started the car and drove home. My phone was already buzzing with calls and texts, but I ignored it. I needed time to process, to think, to figure out what came next. When I got home, I poured myself a large glass of wine and sat on my couch in the dark. The shock was wearing off and reality was setting in. I had no job. I had just made myself unemployable in the eyes of some people who would see my resignation as unprofessional or disloyal. I had burned the bridge with my family so thoroughly that I could not imagine how we would ever recover. But I also felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of expectation of trying to prove myself to someone who would never see my worth was gone. I did not have to pretend anymore that everything was fine or that I was okay with being undervalued. I had drawn a line and said no more. My phone would not stop buzzing. I finally looked at it. Texts from coworkers expressing shock and support. Voicemails from my dad that I deleted without listening to. A text from my mom saying we needed to talk. And then the ones that made me smile. Messages from Mr. Harrison and Ms. Chen, both saying basically the same thing. They wanted to meet with me as soon as possible to discuss their accounts. I responded to both immediately, setting up breakfast meetings for the next morning. Then I opened my laptop and started making notes. If I was going to do this, I needed to do it right. I needed a business plan, a legal structure, liability insurance, and about 1,000 other things. But the core was simple. I was going to start my own consulting firm. I was going to do exactly what I had been doing for Mitchell Consulting Services. But this time, it would be mine. I worked until 3 a.m, fueled by wine and righteous anger and the intoxicating feeling of taking control of my own life. By the time I went to bed, I had the skeleton of a plan. The next morning, I met with Mr. Harrison at a diner near his office. He got right to the point. "What you did last night took guts," he said. "But I need to know if you are serious about this. My company depends on good consulting, and I cannot afford instability." I laid out my plan. I was starting my own firm, bringing the same methodology and expertise he had relied on for years. I would personally oversee his account. I could start immediately on the project we had been planning. He listened, asked good questions, and then nodded. "All right, send me a contract. I am moving my business to you." Just like that, I had my first client, $3 million in annual revenue. Ms. Chen was even more direct. She had apparently already discussed the situation with several other clients who had been at the party. They were all concerned about Leo taking over and had been looking for an exit strategy. My dramatic resignation had given them one. "We are coming with you, Sarah," she said. "We trust you," not the Mitchell name. By the end of that week, I had secured contracts with 5 major clients representing over 60% of Mitchell Consulting Services revenue. I also had 3 of our best employees reach out to say they wanted to join me. They had been considering leaving anyway, unsure about Leo's leadership, and now they had a better option. I incorporated my new firm, hired a lawyer to make sure everything was airtight, and signed a lease on a small office space. Nothing fancy at first, just enough room for me and a few employees. I named it Catalyst Consulting Solutions. A fresh start, a new identity, a company built on merit instead of nepotism. The next few months were chaos. Good chaos, but still overwhelming. I was working 18-hour days, rebuilding systems, managing existing projects, and onboarding new clients. But it was my chaos. Every decision was mine, every success was earned, and every challenge was mine to solve. My dad tried to reach out multiple times, angry voicemails at first, accusing me of betrayal and theft. Then, desperate ones as the reality of the situation set in. Mitchell Consulting Services was hemorrhaging clients and employees. Without me there to actually run things, Leo was floundering, projects were being mismanaged, deadlines missed, and what few clients remained were unhappy. I never responded. There was nothing to say. My dad had made his choice, and now he was living with the consequences. I felt a twinge of guilt about the employees who stayed behind, but I had to focus on building my own future. Within 6 months, Catalyst Consulting was thriving. We had grown to 12 employees, all handpicked by me. We had 10 major clients and a reputation for excellence. Industry publications started writing about the new firm that had emerged from nowhere and was already making waves. They called me a rising star, an innovator, proof that talent and hard work still mattered in business. I ran into one of my dad's old golf buddies about a year after the party. He pulled me aside and told me that Mitchell Consulting was in serious trouble. Leo had tried. He really had, but he was in over his head. My dad had come out of retirement to try to save the company, but the damage was done. Clients had lost trust, employees had left, and their reputation was shot. They were in talks to sell the firm to a larger consulting group, probably for a fraction of what it had been worth. I felt a complicated mix of emotions hearing that. Sadness for what could have been, vindication that I had been right about Leo. But mostly, I felt free. That company, that legacy my dad had been so concerned about preserving, it had never really been about family or values. It had been about his ego and his outdated ideas about who deserved to lead. 2 years after the party, I heard through the grapevine that Mitchell Consulting Services had been sold. The new owners kept the name for a few months and then phased it out completely, folding it into their existing operations. My dad retired for real this time. Leo, I heard, was working in sales for some tech startup. We had not spoken since that night. My mom reached out occasionally. We had coffee a few times, awkward conversations where we danced around the real issues. She wanted me to reconcile with my dad, to let go of the anger. I told her I was not angry anymore. I was just done. There is a difference. She did not understand, but I did not need her to. I had built something real, something mine. Catalyst Consulting continued to grow. We opened a second office, we won industry awards, we were profitable and stable and respected. And it was all based on the work we did, not on anyone's last name or their outdated ideas about who was qualified to lead. I thought a lot about that night, about the moment I walked to that podium. People have asked me if I regret it, if I wish I had handled things differently. Maybe I could have stayed and fought from the inside, tried to prove myself, waited for my dad to see reason. But here is what I learned. You cannot make someone value you if they have decided not to. You cannot earn respect from someone who has already decided you are not worthy of it. And you cannot build a legacy on someone else's foundation if they are going to pull it out from under you whenever it suits them. Walking away was the hardest and best decision I ever made. It hurt. It cost me my relationship with my father, damaged my relationship with my mom, and forced me to rebuild my entire professional life from scratch. But it also freed me from constantly trying to prove my worth to someone who would never acknowledge it. My dad wanted to build a legacy. He wanted the Mitchell name to mean something. But he forgot that a legacy is not about a name on a building. It is about the work you do, the people you impact, and the values you uphold. He chose bloodline over competence, ego over fairness, and in doing so, he destroyed the very thing he was trying to preserve. I built my own legacy instead. Not the one I was supposed to inherit, but the one I created from nothing. It is smaller, maybe, but it is mine. Every client, every employee, every success belongs to me and the team I built. Nobody can take that away or diminish it or give it to someone else because they think they deserve it more. Sometimes, the family you are born into is not the one that values you. Sometimes you have to walk away from what you thought you wanted to find what you actually need. Sometimes, burning the bridge is the only way to stop going back to a place that will never feel like home. I am proud of what I built. I am proud that I walked away, and I am proud that I chose myself over a fake title and empty promises. They thought I was a supporting character in my brother's story. I decided to write my own. Was I right to burn the bridge? Or should I have stayed and fought from the inside? Let me know in the comments.